What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for Arrow Season 7 Episode 5, titled The Demon. So I have a lot of things to talk about. First of all, the actual title of the episode is The Demon, and the Demon is a character who was being built up throughout the first 4 episodes of the season. Going after what was going on in the last episode, I expected it to be Jared Parker, the psychiatrist, but I did say in my trailer breakdown that I hope it is someone else, and it was revealed to be someone else, and it was revealed to be Talia al Ghul. Now, one thing I'll say is, in hindsight, I do not know how I didn't see this coming. I mean, she is the daughter of the demon, and it can't really be Nissa al Ghul, so I don't know why I didn't think it is Talia al Ghul. I mean, maybe because she was implied to have been killed off, and I'm really glad that she wasn't killed off in the Lianu explosion. Although it does suck that the Lianu explosion failed to kill off yet another character, Talia al Ghul was one of the characters that I really did not want the explosion to kill off. Characters like Dinah and Slade and Talia were characters who I think they could have done a lot more with after the Lianu explosion. Every other character, maybe Curtis as well, I don't really think they needed any of those characters, or at least not all of those characters. They could have killed off some of them, but Talia al Ghul was one of those characters that I did not think they should have killed off, and they didn't, or it turns out that she got out of it somehow, and that was revealed in this episode. In terms of the reveal that she is the demon, I don't know how, but it was so unexpected, and I thought it was a pretty great reveal. I thought that her being the demon was a great thing because, I mean, it fits the character. Her father was called the demon, and she is the daughter of the demon, so it fits really well. She's a character who I thought was great in Season 5, and I am glad they brought her back for this episode. She was the villain that Stephen Amell was teasing that would come back for this season that has not been confirmed, and I'm really glad they didn't confirm it, or it wasn't leaked or something, because it was a good revelation. Also, Talia al Ghul did kind of mention Batman in this episode when she said that during the time between Season 5 finale and Season 7, she went to Gotham to meet up with an old friend. That is most likely Batman, and I thought that was a pretty great reference. Who knows, maybe in that 1 year period she even gave birth to Damian Wayne. I mean, it's possible. It's more than 9 months, so who knows. I'd say that the fact that they actually mentioned, or at least hinted towards the fact that Talia al Ghul had some storyline with Batman in this universe, that was pretty great in my opinion. I would like to see that storyline. I think that, I would love to see Batman, but the reference is great as well. But moving on to the actual storylines of this episode, starting with the one that Talia al Ghul was a part of, which is the Oliver Queen in prison storyline. So as usual, this storyline was easily the best part of the episode. This whole storyline of Oliver being in prison has been so damn good, and it's made the entirety of the first half of the season, or at least the first couple episodes of the season, the first 5 episodes actually, so good. So this storyline was all about Oliver meeting the demon, who turned out to be Talia al Ghul. I already talked about that early in the video, but the actual interactions between Talia and Oliver and Talia's role in the episode. For instance, the conflict between Talia and Oliver was resolved in this episode, the conflict with the fact that Oliver actually killed Ra's al Ghul in Season 3, and that was resolved in this episode by Oliver saying that he wasn't really thinking about the fact that Ra's al Ghul has a family, and he wasn't thinking about anything outside of the fact that Ra's al Ghul wanted to kill everyone in his city, which I thought that was resolved really well. And I hate to admit it because you know how much I love Season 5, but Season 5 kind of failed to resolve the conflict between Talia and Oliver, and the reason they did that is because they chose instead to have a fan servicey fight between Nissa and Talia. This isn't really criticism to Season 5, especially not the finale, because that finale, like I said a million times, is an awesome episode, and that season is great, but they definitely did fail to resolve that conflict, so I am happy they finally did in this episode. The fight scenes in this episode were really good. Seeing Oliver and Talia actually fight together, I think for the first time on screen, was so awesome. Probably just because Talia was the one who taught a lot of what Oliver knows, so they have similar fighting ability. I thought that was just so awesome to watch on screen. The fight scenes in this season so far have been so good, and I'm not saying this episode has had the best fight scenes yet, but that's still, this episode had some awesome fight scenes between Oliver, Talia, and the guards in prison. I thought those fight scenes were awesome. Also, a big thing that happened in this episode was the psychiatrist, Jared Parker, was trying to inject Oliver with something, and then he actually fought back, and in the last episode, the psychiatrist made him think that he's no longer Oliver Queen, he's just inmate 4587, and in this episode, it was so satisfying to watch him fight back against that. It's very similar to some of that happened in Season 3, which I know this video is really weird. I definitely criticized Season 5 a little, now I'm praising Season 3. It's a weird video, I would say, but in Season 3, he was Al-Saim for a while, and I do think that storyline dragged on a little too long, but it was so satisfying when he screamed, "My name is Oliver Queen," at the end, or in the beginning of season 3, in the beginning of the finale. And I think in this episode they did something similar, where in the last episode, and I think they did it much better in this episode because it was so much shorter and it was so much sweeter for it. I mean, the storyline was not dragged on too long, where he was inmate 4587 for like 5 or 6 episodes, like he was Al Sahim for 5 or 6 episodes in season 3. So it was awesome when in the last episode he turned into inmate 4587, and in this episode he turned back into Oliver Queen and he screamed, "My name is Oliver Queen." That was an awesome moment. So this episode ended with such a satisfying feeling when the whole storyline, at least in Oliver's perspective, was to get Talia al Ghul to leave the prison with the information and to get it to Felicity and to expose everything that's happening in level 2. That was after everything that he learned. I mean, before that, the goal for him was to get intel on Diaz, which didn't turn out to be a thing that he got, but he did definitely expose everything that was happening in level 2. He got Jared Parker arrested, and then Talia al Ghul actually killed him, and all of this was such a satisfying thing to watch because throughout the first 4 episodes of the season, Oliver was doing nothing but either losing or not really getting to where he needs to be in that specific episode. And in this episode, he finally wins by exposing everything that's happening in level 2, actually getting Talia al Ghul out of prison, which, I mean, isn't exactly the biggest win, but that was his accomplishment or his goal in this episode, and exposing everything that happened and getting Jared Parker arrested and then going back to level 1. It was satisfying because he actually won something, or he won in this episode as opposed to the first 4 episodes where he was doing nothing but losing. So that was awesome to watch. So I think I've talked about the main storyline of this episode quite enough in this video. Moving on to the side storylines. First of all, there's Felicity, Laurel, and Dinah teaming up in this episode to investigate everything that's going on with Oliver in level 2, and subsequently exposing everything that happened in level 2 with Oliver's help. I thought this side storyline was so much better than I expected it to be. I mean, Felicity, Laurel, and Dinah interacting together are actually surprisingly a lot of fun. I think these 3 characters clash off against each other really well. I mean, it's so much better than I expected it to be, and I don't know why I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't really typically like Felicity in these episodes, and I didn't really love her in this episode. I think there were a lot of scenes where she screams too much, but in this episode, her interactions with Laurel and Dinah, and I think especially Laurel, actually are a lot of fun. Felicity's and Laurel's friendship is something that they might be creating in this season, which I actually kind of enjoy. It's a really weird, this episode's really weird because there are things that I don't really typically enjoy in this show that I did like these 3 characters interacting. I didn't expect to like it, but I did like it a lot more than I expected it to, probably because it ended in such a satisfying way with them exposing everything in level 2, which connected to everything that was happening with Oliver, and then finding a way to maybe get Oliver out of prison. It was just such a satisfying ending that I could not help but actually enjoy this storyline. But then there's the third storyline with Argus, with Diggle and Curtis, that I thought was maybe not as good as the other 2. I mean, the Felicity, Dinah, and Laurel storyline was nowhere near as good as the prison storyline, but it was serviceable. Then there's this one, which isn't very great. I mean, it's not bad. Certainly not bad. I think I do like Curtis's conflict with the fact that he doesn't really want to be Mr. Terrific again, but he loves being Mr. Terrific, and I thought that was handled pretty well. But everything that's going on with Argus right now, I don't really care all too much because I've said this before. It has absolutely nothing to do with Oliver Queen and no character that's a great character on the show, or at least is no longer a great character on the show, so I don't really care what's going on. Everything that's going on with Team Felicity, as Felicity called them, directly affected Oliver Queen. Also, Dinah was there, and I think she's a great character, so I did care about that storyline. But this one with Argus and Diggle and Curtis, I don't really care what happens to them, so I thought that was easily the weakest part of the episode. That being said, it wasn't terrible. I mean, Curtis, like I said, his conflict between whether or not he wants to or should not be Mr. Terrific, that was handled pretty well, and there were some enjoyable parts to it, but easily the worst part of this otherwise pretty incredible episode. This episode did not have any flash forwards, and Green Arrow didn't appear in this episode. I mean, the new Green Arrow, and something I've said before is that 3 things that I'm very interested in this season so far is Oliver in prison, the flash forwards, and the new Green Arrow, and this episode only had one of those 3 things, which usually would be a problem if the main storyline, which is Oliver in prison, wasn't so heavily focused on, which it 100% was. So it's not really a problem that there was no Green Arrow or flash forwards, but I would have liked to see those two things in this episode as well. But I get that they can't really put it in every single episode, although I do think the flashbacks were in almost every episode in the first 5 seasons of the show, so they definitely can. They just didn't, which, again, this episode was so heavily focused around the Oliver in prison storyline that it didn't really become a problem, especially when that storyline was so good in this episode. In conclusion, this episode continues the streak of Arrow Season 7 being so good and being maybe primed to be the best season of Arrow. Possibly, maybe, I don't know, but this episode was also really, really good. I'll give this episode a 9.4 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.